Alright, welcome back to the MSDP Getting Started tutorial series. In this last Getting Started video, we're going to look at how to create audio-reactive modules and how to use audio to control video. And we'll also look at how to record both audio and video in the program. So we have the same setup that we had at the end of the last video with a few changes. I've made this window a little bit smaller, and that's so that we can fit more onto the screen without things getting too crowded. So we have a very nice effect here, and if we want to make something audio reactive, we need some audio. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into our select board menu, and I'll grab controllers. This is effectively what we had last time, but I have made some changes. I actually turned the toggle off so that it wouldn't start by default, and I've tweaked the attack, decay, and release time, and then I've also set the rate to be, no, I guess it is the same rate. I'll choose some notes for us to possibly synthesize. Stick with that nice, easy C major pitch collection, and then I'll hit start so we can hear that going. And we have a 16th note interval and a 32nd note duration. So say we want to map the amplitude of this generator onto, say, the frequency of the waveform for our WFG radial module. We can do that quite easily with one specific data module. If we go into the data dropdown and we go into the control section, we will find the signal automator near the end of that section. Now the signal automator actually looks for signal outputs and then allows us to map them onto other locations. So just so that we don't go crazy listening to this for the next however many minutes, I'm going to set the first output to be master 0, that's our dummy. So we won't hear anything for a while, but it is still generating sound. And I'm going to take that A1 output as the second output that we made a while ago, and I will send that in as our first signal into the signal automator. So type A1, and we can begin to see there's that waveform. It's pretty active. We can choose between RMS and absolute values, and we can choose depth if we wanted to scale that back a little bit, but let's leave that at the full depth. Now, one nice thing about the signal automator module is that we can actually bring in a couple of additional signals if we wanted to increase the complexity and scope of what we're doing as we map multiple signals into multiple modules. But for this first example, we'll just use that A1. Now, if we want to then use this to control another module, we need to switch over to the Control tab, where we can see that we can send that signal's data onto up to 5 different locations. And like we did with the stochastic instrument, we actually need to use the module's destination ID to determine where this is going to go. And my cat is currently pushing my mouse around, which makes this a little bit harder, but maybe he'll calm down. Okay, and we're back. He's calmed down too. So I'm going to take the vsynth WFG radial modulation ID, and I'm going to copy that into the destination module for that first control strip. Now, the numbers for the parameter values in the radial module aren't listed. We'll notice that in most of our modules, every single parameter has a number that's listed by it. And we need to know the parameter number in order to map our information onto that parameter. That's why we have this view routing list option, where we can see, okay, parameter 1 is time, parameter 2 is the time toggle, that one right there. Parameter 3 is the frequency, that's what we want to use. So the next setting that we have in our control strip is what parameter number that we have, and that's already set to 3, so that's perfect. And we need to choose a range for our frequencies. I've noticed that this tends to work nicely if we use kind of larger numbers. So I'm going to map the signal from a range of 0 to 1, which is the original amplitude there, onto a value between, let's say, 100 and 10,000, a nice big change. We can choose whether those output values are going to be integer or floating point, and then rate determines how often that number is pulled and output per second. So this is 20 control values per second, which I've found for control data to be usually ample, but we can scale that up if we want to, or scale that down if we only wanted to grab that at a lower interval. Now that we've set that up, we need to choose which of our signals we're going to grab, and we want signal 1, right? So I'll go into signal select, and I will choose 1, and we start to immediately see some changes. Now if I switch the instrument from master 0, the output, back to master out, we can actually hear that these changes are synchronized. So those amplitudes are then being mapped onto the amplitude of the frequency of the WFG synthesizer. So that's pretty neat, and immediately we can see how easy it is to map signals onto parameters for other modules. And we could continue to increase this in complexity and add new input sources to send those to new locations. But there's another way that we can control parameters that's sort of similar, can also allow us to synchronize events across our platform, and that is the Lfo Automator. So I made a new module, I'm going back to data, and I'm going to go to Lfo. So the Lfo Automator generates a low-frequency oscillator at a rate that is synchronized with the metronome. As we can see here, just like we have the ability to input up to 3 signals, in the signal automator, in the Lfo Automator, we have the ability to generate and then modify up to 3 LFOs. So I can turn on additional LFOs. If I want to, I can actually synchronize that to a global beat source or to a custom beat source so that we can have things that intentionally occur out of time, but we'll keep things synchronized today. And we can choose different waveforms. But I like the nice, simple sine wave. And we can choose that rate, right? So that's going at a rate of 1/8 notes. I like whole notes. Much calmer, right? So mapping control in the Lfo Automator is actually the same as mapping control in the signal automator. So if we wanted to, say, get similar parameters, we can actually just steal the data that we used before. So what we're saying is that we want the first LFO to control the output values. And what I'm noticing here is that this is not going past 1 kilohertz, and that's because I need to change that frequency toggle. Oh, look at that. That's totally different, right? That's what I was missing before. So now this LFO, which is slowly sweeping up and down between values of 0s and 1, those values are being mapped to values between 100 and 10,000, and then that data is being sent over to the WFG radial number 639, and using values between 100 and 10,000 as our frequency value for the WFG radial module. Okay, so we've got something that we like, and this is, in a sense, this is still synchronized because the stochastic granulator here is also happening in time with the metronome. So even though the change to the synthesis is occurring at a rate that is not necessarily caused by the granulator, these two events are occurring in synchronization. So wouldn't it be nice if we could, say, record our video explorations and record our audio explorations? Well, we certainly can do that, and that's what I want to finish today's discussion on. We can record our output via the recording block at the far right side of the console. We can see that we have a record button and the ability to choose a name for our recording. So let's start with an audio recording, something nice and simple. I'll call this Getting Started Sounds. And then over here, below the video size options, we can actually see the ability to choose whether we record audio, video, a video that has audio built in, or video and audio separately. Let's do video and audio separately so that we can actually see that these go to 2 separate locations. So now that we have a name selected for a recording, and now that we've chosen what type of recording we want to make, we can simply hit that record button on, oh wait, we need to do one more thing before we start. We need to choose the video channel that we use to receive this video. Now we can see that we're using video channel 2 for the video input into the projector, and that's what we want to capture here, so I'm going to set that to video channel 2. That's an important thing to remember. Now we've set everything, and if we hit recording, this will just run. I'm going to turn that volume back up so we can hear it. I think that's enough. Now, we have at this point generated both a video and an audio file, and we'll find that in our Media Manager. We can see there's Getting Started, and there's our Getting Started video, and we can actually check those out and try them out. But one more thing I want to point out is that the files have this _0 appended to the end of the name, and that's actually done intentionally. We can record again, make a new recording, and we can continue to make new recordings using the same name. Every time we start a new recording, a new number will be appended to the end of that file. So if I hit record again, and then stop again, and we go back to that Media Manager, we now see Getting Started 0 and Getting Started 1, both in our audio and in our video. So let's look at where these files live so that you can retrieve them for your own purposes later. We want to navigate to the folder where we saved our project. Now, I saved that folder on my desktop, and if I want to be able to see that, I actually need to toggle out of full screen. I'm going to turn that LFO off. It's starting to distract me. So on the console, we have this button right here where it says full screen on. If I toggle that off, suddenly our console is a floating window. Everything is a floating window. And we can navigate through the rest of our system. So I'm actually going to throw this off the screen so it's out of my way. I will minimize these. I'll leave that up. And let's look at our project folder. There it is, Getting Started. Now, when we save a project, an entire folder is generated. There is our project file with all the information about our project. We also have all these additional folders: audio files, save MIDI, plugins, scores, video, and presets. These are the folders and files that contain information that is pertinent to this specific project. And we can see that if we open audio files, there are our two recorded audio outputs. And if we go to saved video, there are two recorded video outputs, and they look like we expect them and want them to look. So this is great. These can now be uploaded to SoundCloud, YouTube, whatever your favorite social media sharing platform is, and you can show this off to the world. So that finishes up our Getting Started tutorial series. There are more tutorials available for you to peruse on YouTube, with more complex concepts for you to dive into. I hope you have a wonderful time using this platform, and I can't wait to see what you make in MSDP.